Taylor and Deacon's world shatters in a way neither of them ever imagined possible. The moment the truth becomes undeniable that Sheila Carter is no longer just a shadow from their past, but a living, breathing threat closing in on them with terrifying precision, her obsession twisted into something far more dangerous than anyone in Los Angeles had ever prepared for. And what begins as a tense disagreement inside Deacon's apartment quickly escalates into a life-or-death realization when Taylor receives a chilling anonymous message that simply reads, "You can run, but you can't hide from me," signed with a familiar symbol that sends a cold shock straight through her body, because only one person would dare communicate like that: Sheila. The air inside the room feels heavier as Deacon reads the message over Taylor's shoulder, his expression hardening as years of complicated history with Sheila flood back into his mind. Every mistake, every near-death experience, every moment he convinced himself that Sheila Carter was finally gone from his life, only to realize she had always found a way back, like a ghost that refused to stay buried. Taylor, normally composed and rational, begins to feel something she hasn't felt in years: pure survival fear. Not the kind of fear she experiences in a medical emergency or emotional crisis, but the primal instinct that tells her she is being hunted. Deacon tries to calm her, insisting that Sheila is bluffing, that she is trying to manipulate them psychologically, but even as he says the words, he does not fully believe them himself, because deep down he knows Sheila Carter never makes empty threats. The breaking point comes when a second message arrives, this time accompanied by a photo taken from outside Deacon's own establishment, Illinois Giardino, showing Taylor standing near the window unaware, her image marked with a red circle like a target, proving that Sheila is not just watching, they are already inside her world. That night, sleep becomes impossible. Taylor paces the floor while Deacon checks every lock, every window, every possible point of entry, his instincts as a former flawed protector kicking in, but even he knows that locks and bolts mean nothing to someone like Sheila Carter when she is truly determined. The two of them argue quietly at first, tension building as Taylor insists she should go to the authorities immediately, while Deacon argues that involving law enforcement will only escalate Sheila's unpredictability, especially given her history of escaping consequences. Their voices rise, fear turning into frustration, until suddenly a loud crash echoes from outside the building, forcing them both into silence. Deacon reaches for Taylor's arm instinctively, pulling her away from the window, and for a moment they simply stand there, frozen, listening. Nothing else happens, but the silence is worse than any noise, because it confirms their worst suspicion. Sheila is close enough to toy with them. By dawn, they make a decision neither of them wants to make. They cannot stay in Los Angeles. Taylor, despite her strength and professional discipline, admits in a quiet voice that she does not feel safe anymore, and Deacon, swallowing his pride and his attachment to the life he built in the city, agrees. The plan is not simple. It is rushed, chaotic, and fueled entirely by fear. Deacon burns through old contacts, trying to secure a vehicle, cash, and a route out of the city that cannot be easily traced, while Taylor packs only what is essential, her hands trembling slightly as she folds clothes, medical documents, and a few personal items into a small bag, every movement feeling surreal, like she is abandoning her own identity. She pauses when she looks at a framed photo of her past life, hesitating for just a second before turning it face down, as if severing emotional ties might make survival more possible. Deacon notices her silence, but says nothing. He understands it too well. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, Sheila Carter watches from a distance, her presence never directly revealed but always implied, an unblinking force tracking their every move through stolen information, old contacts, and obsessive intuition. She is not rushing. Sheila is patient. She wants them to feel like escape is possible, because fear tastes sweeter when it grows slowly. She studies Deacon's patterns, his emotional weaknesses, and most importantly, Taylor's protective instincts, already planning how to exploit the bond forming between them under pressure. When Taylor and Deacon finally leave Los Angeles under the cover of early morning fog, the city feels strangely quiet, almost complicit, as if it too knows something dangerous is unfolding. They drive in silence, at first, each lost. in their thoughts, until Taylor finally breaks the silence by asking the question neither of them wants to answer. Where do we go when nowhere feels safe? Deacon grips the steering wheel tighter, eyes fixed on the road ahead, and admits that he doesn't know. But for now, distance is their only chance. They take back roads instead of highways, avoiding predictable routes, changing direction multiple times in an attempt to shake any possible surveillance, but the paranoia lingers like smoke inside the car. Hours pass as they move further away from the city, eventually crossing into unfamiliar terrain where cell service fades and the landscape becomes emptier, more isolated. Taylor begins to relax slightly, though not fully, while Deacon remains tense, scanning mirrors and surroundings with constant vigilance. At one point, they stop at a remote gas station, the kind of place that feels forgotten by time, and even their Deacon insists they do not linger. Taylor notices how every stranger now feels like a potential threat, how fear has altered her perception of reality in just a few hours. When she catches her reflection in the convenience store glass, she barely recognizes the woman staring back at her. Back on the road, tensions rise again when Taylor questions whether running is truly the right choice. She argues that Sheila thrives on control, and by fleeing, they might actually be giving her more power. Deacon counters that staying would be suicide, especially if Sheila is already watching them. Their debate becomes more emotional than strategic, revealing deeper truths neither had fully acknowledged before. Taylor is not just afraid for herself, and Deacon is not just protecting Taylor out of obligation. Something more complicated is forming between them, born out of shared trauma and survival. The realization unsettles them both, but there is no time to explore it. As night falls, they decide to stop at a secluded roadside motel far from the main highway, a place with flickering neon lights and empty rooms that smell faintly of old stories and forgotten lives. Deacon checks in under a false name, avoiding eye contact with the clerk, while Taylor waits in the car, watching every shadow. The room they choose is small, outdated, and barely comforting, but it offers 4 walls and a lock, which at this point feels like luxury. Deacon inspects the room thoroughly, moving furniture away from doors, checking windows, and placing a chair under the handle, while Taylor sits on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone that refuses to ring but feels like it might explode at any moment. In the quiet of the motel room, exhaustion finally begins to set in, but neither of them sleeps. Taylor admits in a whisper that she never thought her life would come to this, running from someone like Sheila Carter, a name that once seemed like a chapter closed in her past but now feels like an inescapable cycle. Deacon responds with a bitter laugh, saying Sheila has a way of making everyone believe she is gone, only to return when they are weakest. The conversation shifts into silence again, heavier this time, until a sudden sound from outside jolts them both upright, a car door closing somewhere in the distance. Deacon immediately moves to the window, peering through the blinds, scanning the darkness outside. Nothing appears unusual, just empty space and the faint glow of distant highway lights, but the fear has already returned. Taylor quietly asks if he saw anything, and he hesitates before saying no, though his expression suggests otherwise. He does not want to panic her unnecessarily, but he cannot shake the feeling that they are being watched again. Far away, Sheila Carter sits in her own vehicle, smiling faintly as she observes their location through indirect means, satisfied that she has already pushed them exactly where she wants them, isolated, exhausted, and vulnerable. She does not rush to confront them. Instead, she plans. Sheila knows that fear is strongest when stretched over time, and Taylor and Deacon are now exactly where she wants them. Far from Los Angeles, far from help, and far from certainty. Inside the motel room, Taylor finally closes her eyes for a moment, but sleep does not come easily. Her mind replays every decision that led her here, every interaction with Sheila Carter she once underestimated, every warning she ignored. Deacon sits nearby, silently watching the door, determined not to let history repeat itself. And as the night deepens, both of them understand a terrifying truth. Fleeing Los Angeles was not the end of their problem. It was only the beginning of Sheila Carter's next move. Because Sheila is not just chasing them anymore. She is guiding them. Morning arrives at the roadside motel like a slow, Uneasy revelation. The kind of dawn that doesn't bring relief, but instead exposes how fragile the night truly was. Taylor is the first to wake, not from sleep, but from a shallow half-dream that never fully carried her away from reality. Her eyes open to the dim gray light slipping through the cracked blinds, and for a moment, she forgets where she is. Then it all rushes back. The escape, the fear, Sheila Carter, the constant sense of being watched. Her chest tightens as she slowly sits up, listening. Silence. Too much silence. Deacon is still awake, sitting in a chair he positioned near the door, his posture rigid, his eyes heavy but alert. He looks like a man who refused to surrender to exhaustion, as if sleep itself might be dangerous. When he notices Taylor moving, he gives a slight nod, acknowledging that neither of them made it through the night unshaken. No words are needed at first. The silence between them has become its own language, shaped by fear and survival. Taylor finally speaks, her voice low. Did anything happen? Deacon shakes his head slowly. Nothing. But that's what worries me. It's the kind of answer that doesn't comfort. It deepens the unease. Because in their world now, nothing doesn't mean safety. It means waiting. Outside, the motel parking lot looks ordinary, almost peaceful, with a few scattered cars and a tired vending machine humming against the morning air. But to Taylor, everything feels staged, like a set built for something about to go wrong. She pulls her hair back, trying to regain control over her thoughts, but her hands tremble slightly as she does it. Deacon notices, but says nothing. He's learned that comfort right now doesn't come from words. It comes from awareness. He gets up and checks the door again, even though he already checked it twice during the night. The lock is still in place. The chair is still wedged under the handle. Nothing appears disturbed, yet his instincts refuse to relax. That instinct is what has kept him alive this long before Sheila Carter became part of his nightmares. We need to move again, he says finally. Taylor looks up sharply. We just got here. And we were found here once already, Deacon replies quietly. Even if she hasn't shown herself, I don't like that feeling. Sheila doesn't wait without reason. That name hangs in the room like a poison no one can escape. Taylor stands slowly, walking toward the small bathroom sink, splashing water on her face. She stares at herself in the cracked mirror. The reflection staring back at her looks older somehow, not in years, but in weight. Fear changes people faster than time ever could. When she returns, Deacon has already started packing their things again. Everything is done quickly, efficiently, as if repetition has turned panic into routine. Taylor watches him for a moment before speaking again. Where are we even going to go, Deacon? We can't just keep running forever. He pauses for a second, then exhales. We're not running forever. Just long enough to figure out what she wants. That's the problem, Taylor replies. We already know what she wants. Control. Obsession. Power over anyone who once stood in her way. Deacon stops packing. His jaw tightens slightly. Then we stay unpredictable. But even as he says it, neither of them fully believes in unpredictability anymore. Sheila Carter has always had a way of adapting faster than anyone else, of turning chaos into structure that only she understands. Within an hour, they are back on the road. The car feels smaller now, more enclosed, like the outside world has started pressing in on them. The landscape changes slowly. Motel strips fade into rural roads, and rural roads give way to stretches of emptiness, where even buildings become rare. Taylor watches everything pass by the window, but nothing registers clearly. Her thoughts keep returning to one question she hasn't said out loud yet. How long until Sheila stops playing games? Deacon drives in silence for a while before finally turning the radio on, then off again. Nothing feels appropriate. Even normal sounds feel intrusive now. At one point, Taylor's phone buzzes. The sound is so sudden it makes both of them freeze. She stares at it without touching it. The screen lights up with an unknown number. Deacon slows the car slightly. Don't answer it. I'm not going to, she says quickly. But the phone keeps vibrating. Once. Twice. Then stops. A message appears. No image. No signature. Just a single line. You chose distance. I chose direction. Taylor's breath catches. Deacon grips the steering wheel tighter. We need to turn off that phone. I already did, she replies, voice shaky. That wasn't even possible unless she already knows the number, Deacon finishes. The realization hits them both at the same time. This is no longer about tracking in the traditional sense. This is familiarity. Sheila doesn't need technology alone. She needs patterns. People. History. Taylor looks out the window again, suddenly aware of every vehicle that passes them. A truck in the distance. A dark sedan farther back. A motorcycle that disappears too quickly. She's not just following us, Taylor whispers. She's predicting us. Deacon doesn't respond immediately because part of him knows she's right. Hours later, they reach a small town that barely shows up on any map, the kind of place that exists between routes rather than on them. Deacon decides they need fuel, supplies, and a change of vehicle, if possible. They pull into a nearly empty gas station, its paint faded, its lights flickering despite the daylight. Taylor stays in the car, while Deacon goes inside. She watches him through the glass as he speaks to the attendant, exchanging money and brief words, keeping everything minimal. The attendant barely looks up, uninterested in the world outside his small counter. But Taylor notices something else. A black SUV parked 2 rows away. Engine off. No one inside. At least, no one visible. Her pulse begins to rise. She leans forward slightly, trying to see better. The vehicle doesn't move. It just sits there, too clean, too deliberate, too out of place in this forgotten town. Deacon comes back out with a bottle of water and a small bag. She immediately opens the door before he even reaches the car. There's a car over there, she says quickly. He follows her gaze. The SUV. His expression hardens instantly. How long has it been there? I don't know, Taylor replies. But it wasn't there when we arrived. That's all Deacon needs. Get in, he says immediately. They don't wait for questions. He starts the car, but instead of pulling out normally, he drives slowly, carefully, watching mirrors, watching reflections, watching for any sign of movement. The SUV remains still. For now. They leave the gas station without incident, but neither of them relaxes. In fact, the tension increases because stillness now feels like strategy rather than absence. Taylor finally speaks after several minutes. Do you think it was her? Deacon doesn't answer right away. Then, I think everything is her until proven otherwise. That answer settles heavily between them. As they continue down the road, the sky begins to darken unexpectedly, clouds gathering like something is shifting. The air feels heavier again, as if the world itself is reacting to their movement. Then, without warning, Deacon notices something in the rearview mirror. A vehicle behind them. The same black SUV. Taylor sees it too. Neither of them speaks. The SUV is not speeding. Not hiding. Just following. Deliberate. Consistent. Unchanging distance. Taylor's voice drops. It's been behind us since the station. Deacon's grip tightens. I know. Should we lose it? He hesitates. That's the question. The same question that always leads to escalation. But before he can answer, the SUV suddenly changes lanes. Moves closer. Not aggressively, but intentionally. Taylor turns fully now. Deacon, I see it, he says quietly. The SUV flashes its headlights once. Just once. A signal. Or a warning. Or recognition. Deacon makes a split-second decision and turns off the main road onto a narrower dirt path cutting through a stretch of trees. The car jolts slightly as gravel replaces pavement. The SUV follows without hesitation. Taylor braces herself. She found us. Deacon's voice is low, controlled but strained. She never lost us. The trees close in around them as the road narrows further. There is no clear destination now, only escape routes that are disappearing one by one. And behind them, the SUV continues to follow, steady as a heartbeat. Inside that vehicle, unseen, Sheila Carter watches the path ahead with a calm, almost satisfied expression, as if everything is unfolding exactly as she planned from the beginning. Because in her mind, Taylor and Deacon never escaped Los Angeles. They simply entered her game. And now, there is no road left that does not lead back to her.